In this video, we're going to be discussing some questions that people have asked me via Facebook. So this is going to be a really interesting thing for you guys. It's all about sexuality. So the first question is, Mary Gurgois, sorry if I get your name wrong, says, do you believe in the 90-day rule, brackets, Steve Harvey? How long before you give yourself to a man? Well, Steve Harvey. He's obviously my enemy because he's got Harvey in his name.
Fight!
I respect the guy, he's a really cool guy. But I want to point this out there that we want to change the way that we look at sex a little bit. Because, first of all, you know, if we follow rules to a T, if we follow like this blanket statement rule, sure, it's there for a reason. You know, he's created it because it suits a purpose. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. And you can't always plan the unplannable, which is why a lot of the times I refuse to give people a step-by-step process. Sure, there is a process, but for certain things, I refuse to give people a certain step-by-step process because we don't want to stifle ourselves. So Steve Harvey has the 90-day rule, you know, and it really works for him because I'm pretty sure that what he does is because, you know, you have to think at the end of the day, like, any coach or any person is always talking to a specific demographic. You know, I'm more talking to people who are really, I guess what I would say, like modern dating. You know, we want something that's quite unique for us, and we want something that is, because everyone has a different relationship style. So we want to have something that's very unique for us. Steve Harvey, you know, I follow this stuff a little bit. I'm not like a massive, you know, I don't praise be to Steve Harvey. I respect the guy, but I don't really know a lot of his stuff personally. From what I've seen of his stuff, right, this is only my interpretation, from what I've seen from his stuff, he targets people who want like the nuclear family, you know, like the Simpsons family, two and a half kids and a dog and maybe a cat. And so maybe the 90-day rule works specific for those people. But if you're someone who wants specific for you, we want to like try and break this down and understand it a little bit. So you wrote in this question, before you give yourself to a man. You know, it's almost like you're giving a gift. And that is true. You're giving a gift of yourself, right? But the thing, what I don't like about this rule is that if you only specifically say 90 days, you know, and as my sister pointed out when we were discussing this before the video, she was like, you know, it's like 90 days, what that's maybe like 6 dates, you know, that's like what, like a couple months or whatever. Maybe you see each other once a week or twice a week. It can be still a while, right? But everyone is different. Some people are incredibly sexual and some people aren't. You know, for the people that aren't necessarily that sexual, maybe 90 days is a good thing. But what I want to do is I want to get rid of the idea that sex is like this monetary exchange. Because truly, at the very core of it, sex is not the message, it's the medium, right? It's like what people express through sex. Now, admittedly, and this is going to be a fucking brutal blanket statement, there are a lot of guys out there that will have sex with anything that moves. And what the 90-day rule does, that Captain Steve Harvey has done, is that this is designed to screen out those men, right? What I propose is let's just do things fucking quicker. Let's just get to the point a lot quicker. So what I'm going to propose is not necessarily the 90-day rule, but what we need to do is come up with some parameters that really allow you to screen a guy out beforehand, which are going to be unique for you. This is what I call your strategy for love. Now, at the very core of it, we have certain things that we do when we meet someone, right? We have, you know, we want to talk shit with them. Maybe you're like me, when I meet someone that I really like, I just want to joke around with them, you know, because I don't want to take life too seriously sometimes because other parts of my life have to take it really seriously. Maybe you want to say hi or someone has to say hi. Like, there are obviously step-by-step processes that, you know, you have gone through that have made the relationship turn out the way that they have. And chances are there have been some relationships that you've been in that have worked really well, that maybe you've even slept with him on the first date. You know, I know plenty of people who've slept with each other on the first date and they've had this amazing, incredible connection that's lasted the rest of their life. Some people have even had one-night stands that have even turned into amazing relationships. So the 90-day rule is going to stop you from connecting with these people. But instead, a lot of men process sex as the same way they process their other emotions. That when they are attracted to someone emotionally, sometimes it's like two in the same thing. But I've never met a guy who has left a girl because the sex was really good. because really at the core of it, he hasn't really connected with her, or he hasn't really connected with who she is, or values, or all of these things that really allow two people to connect, or the polarity, as we mentioned in the last video, right? Instead, we want to come up with some parameters that are unique for you, because chances are, if you're with a guy and he's only wanting you for sex, that is probably something you don't want. And maybe some people do. You know, there's a really good example. I met someone and she said she just had the Tuesday night boyfriend. You know, he was the guy she only saw on a Tuesday night. They didn't contact each other for the rest of the time, but on a Tuesday night, they were full in love. And some people need that. This is what I'm a massive advocate for, is that some people need, you know, something that suits them specifically. And waiting the 90-day rule is going to get you that family unit. So instead, what we want to do is come up with some parameters. So one really good parameter is you have to be sexually attracted to him. You know, that's a really fucking big deal. You need to, you know, he needs to have whatever you potentially want in a partner. Like, there are some lists, but one of the biggest things that you do need to have is that he cares about you for you. So whether or not you come up with a test, because this is about testing, right? And I'll explain why it's about testing. Whether or not you come up with, you do the test that is the 90-day rule, or you do something that's a bit different, rather than, you know, provoking him, or, you know, just testing who he is, or maybe introducing him to your friends, or mentioning that you want to introduce him to your friends and see how he reacts. Because you can easily do that. Be like, hey, you know, me and my friends are doing this thing. Why don't you come with us? If he doesn't come with you, then he doesn't care about you in a more intimate level. He just wants you just for sex. You know what I mean? There are things that you can do that you don't have to wait 90 days. You can have your answer now, is what I'm trying to say. But without knowing you yourself, we can't come up with specific things. So if you do want to test, what I'm going to suggest is that you try and suggest you introduce him to your friends. You don't necessarily have to introduce him to your friends, but when you do that, you will see where he's at. Because if he wants to do it, then that's really good. He wants to impress you. But if he doesn't want to do it, or maybe he's completely adamant, maybe he's either one, afraid, or two, he doesn't want a relationship, you know? There's these kinds of things. But it's worth pointing out that I know a lot of people who've got some value out of Steve Harvey's 90-day rule, and that's really good, and that really suits them, right? But I want to point out that everyone has a different roadmap for love. Everyone experiences love in a different way, and some people experience it very sexually. You know, I know plenty of people that if they waited 90 days with their partner, they'd be fucking other people in the meantime, because they can't necessarily, like, they need that for their survival. They need that for who they are. Different people have different, like, sexuality centers. They have different ways of expressing themselves. And as I said before, sex is not the message, it's the medium. Right? It's a way of communicating. So you'll see that some guys think that sex makes them more powerful, or sex makes them more adventurous, or sex makes them feel loved, right? And you might feel that sex is an amazing way to connect with your partner, but the medium, it's not the message. And if you think that sex is just this be-all and end-all, then honestly, I know there are a lot of guys who will think it's the be-all and end-all, but, you know, don't treat it as this thing that is, I know a lot of cultures and things like that are like, you know, you're giving away. It's like, you know, giving away like a dowry, so to speak. You know, we'll give you some cows, we'll have sex. But we want to change that stigma. You know, there's a lot of guys out there who think that they can buy a woman's love just by buying her some drinks or going on enough dates. You know, they've invested enough time into it, and that gets them thing. And there are a lot of women out there who feel like they invest enough emotions in a guy and he's going to want her back, because that's what they will receive, you know what I mean? Like, that's how they receive love. And so instead, what I really want you to do is develop a higher sense of acumen for this, like a higher emotional acumen to read a person. You know, maybe that means you do have to test him by doing the friends test, for example, or that might mean that you can read between the lines a lot quicker. The whole thing before, by the way, that I was going to say about testing is that it is the role of the feminine. If you want to be the feminine person in a relationship, if you don't know much about masculine and feminine, watch the video that I was talking about before that is about polarity and things like that. It is actually the role of the feminine when it comes to masculine and feminine to test the masculine. If we use the metaphor of if the feminine is water and masculine is the bowl, if the masculine has a crack in it, then the water is going to leak through. So what I'm suggesting is if we are purely talking polarity, if we are purely talking things, it's like you need to come up with some tests that are specific for you maybe 90-day rule, maybe the friends test, specific for you that allows you to see where he's at. And if we're working together, we can come up with some amazing tests for you to see where he's at. So that way you don't necessarily pour your being into his container. Because that's the thing, like you could just put your address on Tinder and guys would rock up. You know, just your address, your thing is female, like your sexual market value is high, right? And when you have a lot of people vying for your attention, it might be worth to test things. Like you have a lot of power here. You actually have a lot more power than you realize. And so that's why it's probably worth testing these guys, so that way you can see if they're up to your standard. So, as always, thanks so much for watching. If you did like this video, make sure to leave a like, because if you did, then I like you. And if you don't subscribe, I'll never feel loved. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Mwah.